Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborn. Today, we are talking about Brunello di Montalcino with three incredible producers in the region, Carpazzo, Arcgiano, and Frescobaldi. We're so glad you've joined us today to taste and learn from our guests. If you did purchase the wines ahead of time from Wine.com, fantastic. Please go ahead and get those open. Brunello is a big wine, and getting a little bit of air in there in your glass is very helpful. We are tasting all three wines today. I encourage you to open them all. One, it's great to taste them side by side to kind of see the unique differences, and also because of their structure and quality and complexity, they will easily last a few days, and so you can enjoy them over the next few evenings. If you don't have the wines, no problem. Still available on Wine.com. And of course, this video lives on the Wine.com YouTube channel. So the wines that we are tasting in order are the Carpazzo Brunello di Montalcino, the Arcgiano Brunello di Montalcino, and the Frescobaldi Castelgiacondo Brunello di Montalcino. So Brunello di Montalcino, this is a wine that is both a grape and a region in the name. Maybe we can go back to that first map. So Brunello is a clone of Sangiovese, and Montalcino, beautiful region where it is grown, kind of very picturesque place, is Brunello di Montalcino. So Brunello, the grape of the region, Montalcino. And as you can see here, it is in Tuscany. Not only is this place just absolutely beautiful and picturesque, but it creates very complex, incredibly age-worthy wines. And so Montalcino itself is sometimes looked at as divided into north and south, but we also have a map that shows that, I hope our guests will speak to in talking about, that you can kind of divide it into four quadrants: the northeast, southeast, northwest, and southwest. And one of the reasons I think this place is so unique is each region has very unique qualities, but also because of the soil. There are very unique soils in each spot within Montalcino, and that can just really have an influence on the resulting wine. So let's get our guests in here to talk more about that, about the regions and the soil. Again, we are tasting the Carpazzo, the Arcgiano, and the Frescobaldi. And joining us today, we have Alessandra Angelini, who is owner of Carpazzo. Also Bernardino. Hello, welcome. We have Bernardino Sani, who is winemaker and CEO of Arcgiano. Welcome, Bernardino. And Lamberto Frescobaldi, who is president of Frescobaldi. Welcome to you all. Thank you for staying up late and taking the time to taste and educate us and our guests that are joining us. I wanted to get started just kind of talking a little bit about what makes this place so very special. And Bernardino, I was going to start with you first. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Could you speak just a little bit to the climate and soil of Montalcino? So
yes, let's say this. Montalcino, in my opinion, has some very unique aspects. That is, it's a little village, medieval village on top of a pretty vast, a pretty big area that is, I think, in acres, 50,000 acres. So it's a pretty vast area, and the majority of that is forest. The majority is wood. More than 60% is forest, and the rest it's only cereal fields, olive trees, vineyards. Nothing industrial, nothing new at all. So it's a totally uncontaminated area. I think this is one of the most important and interesting aspects of Montalcino. The second point is that Montalcino has been created, the soils of Montalcino has been created by many different factors and aspects. There's some part of the hill of Montalcino where thousands and thousands years ago there was the sea covering them, and the sea left a lot of shells, and those created some limestones inside the soil. Then there is the volcano, the Monte Amiata, the mountain called Amiata, that was a volcano, and this also gave a lot of iron, a lot of metals to the soils. So And then there is the Galestro, what makes unique some of the best winemaking area for Sangiovese in Tuscany, not only Montalcino, in Chianti Classico, for example. So there are many different areas. It's a lovely place to do wine because the climate is mostly Mediterranean, but again with totally different areas where the temperature can be different from side by side. So it's lovely because it's a unique, totally uncontaminated area with majority of the ground that is covered, still covered by the forest, and a lot of different soils that are perfect to grow a difficult grapes we will see later on, like Sangiovese.
Absolutely, and we'll taste through them as well. And Lamberto, first, thank you so much for being here. We're grateful for your time to be here, so welcome. I was going to ask you a little bit just to kind of describe Brunello. So it's Sangiovese, but there's something unique and special about Brunello and how it matches with the Montalcino area. Could you speak a little to that?
Indeed. Pretty much Sangiovese is a variety that is pretty much everywhere in Tuscany, everywhere in Italy. And but in Tuscany, especially Tuscany, as you know, is a fairly large region, and you have from the mountains to the sea, and Sangiovese is pretty much everywhere. And funny enough, we in Tuscany, we rarely mention the variety Sangiovese, for the fact that probably is everywhere. So there is no big deal about talking such of the variety. And as a matter of fact, in Montalcino, we call it with a different name. We call it Brunello. Again, to somewhat have a reach between Sangiovese and the region itself. So here, I believe that more than talking about the variety, that is the only variety that is allowed to produce, to have in the area to produce the Brunello Montalcino. So Brunello Montalcino is 100% Sangiovese, although you don't mention that variety. It's again is the interaction that you have in these very well drained soil, as Bernardino was talking about, where there is a mixture of clay and altitude and cool nights, because this is a place where also during the summer, especially during the summer, where you have a very long hot days, at the night, if you have a sweater to put on your shoulders, it's very pleasant. So it's a place where this variety that tends to mature quite quickly in some other areas. Here in Montalcino, it slows down, and it produces these wines that there is a match of maturation of sugars, but also polyphenolic maturation. So that is wines very complex, very, I would say, sometimes they are somewhat, we can maybe name them as ballerina on toes. So they have finesse, they're elegant, but there is big power. As when you go to the theater and you see these ballerinas, that they look very light, very gentle, but there is a lot of power in their body. And it is pretty much is the same for such wine, and this makes these wines terrific to be drank after 5 years when they're young to be on the market, but also terrific after 30 plus years. So it's really unique, and I think that it's something that you do not fall in love immediately. This is a wine that needs to have some romance, needs to have a long day to fall in love with him, and then at a certain moment, I think it's going to be an endless love.
I love all of these analogies. I love the ballerina with the elegance and the power. And then, of course, a nice long date to really become passionate about these wines. So thank you. And Alessandra, I was wondering if maybe you could kind of take a little bit of what they said and speak a little bit to that ageability factor of why this grape and this soil, why is this able to then last for 30 years and be enjoyable? And just evolve and be amazing. Not even enjoyable, but amazing.
Well, that's exactly for what Lamberto was saying, that it's not only the terroir and the characteristics of the soil in which the grape grows, but it's also all about the climate and what happens in Montalcino in spring, then in summertime, and then especially in September, the harvest month, where you have really a big difference of temperature between night and day. And that really accelerates and helps for the polyphenolic maturation and also for the sugars levels. And this is what gives the high acidity to the wine. That's what allows the wine to then age for a longer time, maintain the structure, and never fade away. So this really helps out the wines in Montalcino to have this aging factor with it. Also, it's the only DOCG in the world that requires 5 years of aging in the cellar before you can release it on the market. So that obviously helps a lot as well. But the Sangiovese is a grape, it's a very hard grape to deal with. And I love how Lamberto said before, it's a long love story, because every time, if you speak to my mom, what she tells you is her real true boyfriend of her life is the Sangiovese grape. So she'll always tell you that that's her endless love story. So it's true. It's a grape. It's a hard grape to deal with because it's not easy to farm. They tried farming it all over the world. They tried planting it in France, in California, everywhere around the world, but it just won't turn out the same way. It's so faithful to the land. It's faithful to Tuscany. And even though Montalcino has been quite a recent zone to be discovered as a winemaking zone, because the Consorzio started in '68, and it's true there's been testimonies of people making wine even at the end of the 1800s, but Chianti Classico has been there and certified it's been there since the 1700s. Montalcino started officially in 1968, so it's very recent, and before there were lots of sheep and lots of shepherds, not many winemakers around, but then the soft hills, the rolling hills, the famous Tuscan rolling hills help a lot in growing this grape. And it's just, the climate is just perfect, has this perfect balance. While on the seaside, sometimes it's a bit too warm. In Chianti Classico, it can go to extremes with warm and cold, while Montalcino has that really incredible balance of climate all year round that makes these wines so enjoyable and so age prone.
Yes, age worthy and magical. So, and we're actually going to start with the Carpazzo. And I love first that the name means the house of crazy, which kind of reminds me of my home all the time. So like this just kind of.
So there's two legends over the name.
Legends.
Obviously, the one we like the most is the one that says that it derives from the name Ca del Pazzo, which means house of the crazy men. So probably someone crazy used to live there. Probably someone still lives there if you see us now. But yeah, and the more etymologic root says it probably comes from the Latin that means caput arsum, and that means burned head, and that's because the property is right on top of a hill, and probably in the summertime all around it the sun burns out all the crops all around it, so they say caput arsum, but we like to go with the house of the crazy men.
I like that.
And it's a beautiful house, by the way.
We just saw that house. It's a beautiful house, even if someone crazy was once there. But your mother came in and she acquired and purchased this property about 22-ish years ago. What changes have you seen since then, both at your property and in general?
So yeah, there's many changes have been going on. We started with the cellar. That was our first main step. When we arrived, they were in the making of changing the cellar, but they had just started the restoration. And we arrived and we decided with a whole new plan and a whole new cellar. And so that was 5 years of works going on. But for us, it's fundamental to have a proper working and very making easier for the people to work in cellar. And our cellar always have to look like surgical rooms. We say you end up making something that people drink, so it has to be really aseptic. If you walk through our cellars, you'll see the cure that we keep to keeping it that way. Another big change that has been made is in the vineyards. So both, my brother is an environmental engineer, and well, I'm an engineer as well, but I studied aeronautical, so I'm everything else. But we've been, since the beginning, very careful with the energy use in all our vineyards. We've been the first winery to put solar panels, photovoltaic panels around. And then obviously we expanded the vineyards. So the property used to have maybe 60% of the vineyards that Carpazzo owns today. So it got a little bigger, and also the cure and the philosophy behind the farming of the vineyards, that changed quite a lot over the years. So we're trying year after year to take care. The vineyards are our true treasure. So if you have good vineyards, good grapes grow, and you get the great wine. There's not much you have to do in the cellar after that. We want all our wines to be expression of the vineyard. So I think that's the first and most important step, is taking care of the land where the grape has to grow. And that's what we're trying to focus on now. That's what we've been focusing on in the last 10 years, probably. And then it's a work in progress. Every year we have something new coming up, and it's good to have something always to look forward to, and never new thoughts in our minds, new ideas and new things coming up. We keep ourselves busy all the time.
Good. And I love taking care of the land. It's true. You cannot make great wine out of mediocre grapes. So that is the most important part to focus on. So let's taste this wine. So I know everybody's wanting to do that. And as we taste, I just want to remind kind of everyone joining us at home that these are really complex and incredible wines that have wonderful like aromas and flavors. So as you taste along, just try to really enjoy it and kind of, make sure you get all those swirls in to really get all those aromas out. And as you taste, kind of think about those flavors and the structure and the finish as you go through. And obviously we'll be talking as well with that, but try to really, this is one to just get involved with so you can have that wonderful long love story with the wine. So as we kind of get into this wine, Alessandra, I would love for you to kind of talk us through this as we go through it.
Yes. So tonight I'm personally tasting the 15 vintage. I don't know if everybody's tasting the 15 as well, because this is the current release. So I'm tasting the current vintage. 15 talks for itself. It's been one of those vintage years where it was very easy to be a winemaker. It's one of those years that there was really not much you had to do. The grapes were fantastic. The summer was fantastic. The harvest month was great. We had the right change of temperature between night and day. So obviously it's a big wine. 15 is one of those big vintage years. When you taste the wine, first of all, you get the red fruits from the Sangiovese, because probably the first characteristic of every Sangiovese wine are the Sangiovese grape are the red fruits coming at you immediately. But then 15 is not only about the red fruits. There's a lot of complexity to the wine. What's one of our characteristics at Carpazzo is the fact that we own different vineyards in different locations around Montalcino. You were showing the map before. You can divide Montalcino in 4 quadrants, and we're one of the few wineries to own vineyards in all 4 quadrants. So that's very special because we touch all 4 different soil types, different altitudes, and different climate zones. And so this allows us every year to try and balance the wine a lot. But from here, you get several characteristics. The finesse and the delicacy of the wine probably comes from the northern vineyards. Then you have the power and the structure that are coming from the southern vineyards. 15, if you taste it, it stays in your mouth, has a big persistency. You can see it's a bold, structured wine, so it's for sure a wine that can go on a very long time. Now, people ask you when it's best for you to drink the wine. It's always, every year is best for you to drink the wine. For sure, I can tell you this will be a wine that will evolve over the years and it will last a long time. Now, the peak, I don't have a crystal ball. I'd love to have it. I'd love to give you a specific date, but unfortunately, I think that when you feel like opening the bottle is always the great time to open the bottle. I believe that 2030. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I mean, this wine for sure will last 20, 30 years, but then you never know. Maybe in 10 years, it's its maximum peak. Who knows? I wouldn't know. I can tell you in 20 years, which has been the best year for which to open the bottle. Today, I still can't tell you.
No, you don't have a crystal ball. I always tell people buy a case and then maybe in 10 years start opening one every year. And when it tastes the best, drink them all, right?
Exactly.
Good way to get somebody to buy a case. But speaking of vintages, what are maybe 2 of your favorite vintages in the past 20 years? And then maybe your favorite food that you like to drink with a good Brunello?
Okay, so the favorite vintage years. There are, that's a very tough question.
Maybe in the past 20 years.
It's like asking, what's your favorite child?
Who's your favorite child?
Can you ever pick a child? Every year is a new child.
Exactly. So, every day I have a different opinion on my children, but.
Exactly. And the good thing about wines is that every year is different because there's one thing that human beings cannot control yet, and that's climate. And so we get what we get every year, and that gives us a different wine every year. But what's very interesting about wines like Brunello di Montalcino, which are very long-aged wines, is that they evolve so much in the bottles. For example, 2008, when it was released on the market, wasn't considered such a great vintage. I've been drinking 2008s in the past 3 years, and they have evolved incredibly well, and they're showing to be excellent, great wines that nobody would have thought of if you asked people in 2013 when the wine was coming out. So for sure, one vintage I love a lot is 12. 12 is another big, bold vintage, probably. Sometimes we joke and we define vintage years if it's more feminine, so more towards a delicate, elegant way, or more masculine vintages. Probably 12 is maybe more masculine, but it has an elegancy which is incredible. 15, you can see the potential. You're drinking it now. It's a wine with a fantastic potential, and probably I'm curious to see how it will evolve over the years. But yeah, I can't really pick a best vintage.
That's okay. They all evolve very well. So thank you so much for sharing. I love this wine. I think it's also very approachable right now, which is lovely.
Yeah, that's one of the characteristics of 15 is that even though it's a big wine, it's a persistent wine, it's a structured wine, it's still a very drinkable wine right now. It's very approachable and you're happy to drink it right now. Some big vintages like 2010 probably being named the biggest vintage ever of the 21st century, but when you opened it in 15, 10 was so big, so it was a bomb in your mouth, and it was hard to drink. Probably it's starting to be approachable right now. While 15, even though it's a very big vintage, it's still a very approachable and enjoyable vintage right now.
Delicious. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to the Arcgiano Bernardino. I realize property has a very long history, so we don't have to go through every century, but I thought if you could just give kind of a brief little bit about when it started, and
Yes.
how that came about.
Yes, you're right. Argiano has a long history in Montalcino. The winery, like it is now, dates back to the 16th century, so 1580. It's a long history, as you said. It was founded in the 16th century, and then immediately it became not only a winery but a farm with olive trees, cereals, and wine. It was one of the wineries who followed Biondisanti. At that time, there was the Gaetani Lovatelli family in Argiano, and they followed Biondisanti in the production of Brunello when he invented the Brunello di Montalcino as a wine in the 19th century. It was one of the founders of the Consorzio del Brunello in 1967, and then it went through a second life with Noemi Marone Cinzano when she bought Argiano, and she invited Giacomo Takis, that was an iconic winemaker for Italy. He was the father of the Super Tuscan, and he came to Argiano in the 90s. He started to consult for Argiano, and he stayed in Argiano until 2003. Bringing a lot of new ideas, fresh project, and planting some of the vineyards, existing vineyards that we still use now. And then I think it now living, not because of me, but because of Esteves family who bought it in 2013. It is living a shining moment, because when it was bought by Lilian and Andrea Esteves, it needed some important restoration, and this family was so passionate about the place, about what they saw and what they experienced in Montalcino, that they immediately decided to focus 100% into rising even more the quality of the wine, and then into the restoration of the castle of Argiano, of the Grancia of Argiano, because it's more a farm, a fortified farm than a castle, but it's really unique. And what you see here is the old Renaissance time cellar that has been totally restored. It's back to its original splendor, and it's hosting on one side a collection of wine, not only our wine but wines from producers of Montalcino and also from Bordeaux and Burgundy. And as you see here, it's back to host the best Brunello. So those are the Slovenian oak barrels that we use for the aging of our Brunello di Montalcino, of our Sangiovese, and it's great to be back there in the heart of the property to age our wine, to age our Brunellos.
Yes, and I know that you've worked in different places like California and France, and one thing you've also done with the property is bringing it back into organics, and that's been a big part of what, kind of how you've transformed it, but also with the style goal that you've gone through, right?
So yeah, we tried from the beginning to understand what are the soils that we have underneath our vineyards. So we did micromap all the vineyards to start, and then we decided to switch to be organic. The idea was to push our roots the deeper possible in the soil. So we banned chemical fertilizer, then we banned chemical pesticides in order to almost to push the roots deeper in the soils, where you really have the terroir, because you really have that unique soil aspect that makes also unique your wines. And then we started to be honey. I saw some bee over there to produce honey, to start the production of honey. That is also good to have bees around in the vineyards for the biodiversity and for the flowering season. And for the aging, we went to be pretty traditionalist, because we are using mostly larger casks for the aging of the Sangiovese, but just because we feel that the one unique thing, one good aspect of the terroir of Argiano is the elegance. So you have very refined Sangiovese Sangiovese, very silky tannins. So we don't want to force and push too much in the winemaking and the aging towards some direction, but we want to be very respectful of what we have in the soils and do terroir-driven Brunellos.
Yeah, so let's taste through the wines. Maybe you can talk us through this, because Argiano is in the southern part of Montalcino,
yes,
right?
Southwest. We are in the middle of the southwest of the hill of Montalcino, so around 300 above the sea level. It's a good area because, as I was saying, there's a mix of clays and limestones. A lot of limestones, 2 meters deeper in the soil, and the wine, I think. It's a nice combination, of course, of the classic red fruit of the Sangiovese. So there's the plum, there's the cherry, there's the raspberry, together with some complexity, some spices, some leather notes. But as Lamberto and also as Alessandro were saying before, what I think is unique in the Brunello is not it's the elegance, is the charm. Is like those beauty, those classic Italian beauties. I mean, Sofia Loren or Marcello Mastroianni. They are always charming, but it's not a fact of over extraction, of overpower, of over something. It's just the balance between every component of the wine, and this. So you measure, especially in the mouth, and this elegance and this. The tannins are there, but very silky. The soury, the salty almost mouth makes the Brunello very gastronomic. This is also, I think, something unique of the Brunello. It's such a gastronomic wine. It's a special wine to drink with food, and there's a lot of different aspects. But again, it's never too much. So you can drink it now. You can drink in 10 years. You can drink in 15 years. It's always nice because of its unicity and of its elegance.
Yeah, and I think that may be something to say, is it's not that it necessarily improves, but it evolves, and it has that evolution. So it's when you really enjoy it or what you're looking for, I think, with it. But yeah, I love the structure of this wine. It has a grip, and it does make me want food. So what would be what food that you would enjoy with this?
So it's of course, when in this question, a lot of times we reply, okay, of course, the classic Tuscan food that is the steak, the Florentine steak, the meat, the cheese, the pasta, but it's not true. I think that Brunello is being a gastronomic wine. It's fantastic with Mexican food. It's fantastic with some kind of Asian food. It's even very good with codfish, for example. I'm not saying that you drink it with oysters, but with some codfish, Livornese style is a perfect wine. So they're always a good moment. Just you need something a little bit fatty, just to contrast these nice tannins and this nice acidity of the Brunello.
That's very true. So yeah, this is
so at 1 o'clock in the night, maybe it's better to go.
Yeah, exactly. What would be your perfect, like, tasting this now? When would you want to drink this wine? 10 years?
Where?
When? No,
Yes.
when? Like
when? I think it's. I love the. I'm drinking the 15, so I love the 15 right now because it's not as aggressive as it was the 10, for example. That was really overwhelming sometime. This is already has a great balance from the beginning, but I think in 10 years will be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to save one for them. So thank you, Bernardino. Delicious. I love the elegance. Lamberto, welcome. Hello. Your family has this wonderful, long generation with over 700 years in Tuscany, and you are 30th generation. So can you tell us a little bit, not necessarily year by year, but a little bit of the evolution of Frescobaldi winemaking over these years, maybe especially in the past few decades?
mean, as you said, Frescobaldi is a family has been living in Tuscany now since quite some time. I was really a baby. I was that big that when everything began, over, I would say, over 1,000 years ago. Then around the 1200, an ancestor of mine bought land in Florence, downtown Florence, where I presently live. So is a home house. Then bit by bit, they became traders, and then Florence is famous for banking. So many of the Florentine families, they became bankers. As a matter of fact, that the currency in Florence, Fiorino, became the most important currency in Europe in the medieval time. And then buying land, and then so from bankers we became farmers. I don't know if that was a win-win situation, but this is the fact. And we have a number of estates through Tuscany, and now one in north of Italy. But we really remained very, I would say, in love with the region of Tuscany. Montalcino came in the 70s. I remember with my father going to visit the area when Castelgiocondo began to be developed in the 70s, 74 to be precise. But those days I was 11 years old, and the greatest thing to do in Montalcino was to pick a Volkswagen Bug and drive around the place. The place was quite big. It was, and it is right now also, it's 2,500 acres of land. So woodland a lot, but there's a big bunch of vineyards. And so this is what we have become more and more careful on trying to not doing everything everywhere, but becoming a little bit more specialized on each place. So in Montalcino, not trying to copy anything beyond the region of Montalcino. So if there is some super Tuscan produced in some places in Tuscany, we are very happy about those. But in Montalcino, one has to be very strict on trying to understand the region, as Bernardino and Alessandra was saying, and the result in Alessandra. Could you see the smile that Alessandra had? You know, that is the result of Brunello. You know, that really enhances those smiles. So Brunello has also these terrific side effects, so Brunello means a lot to me, and I believe to anyone that is there producing such a lovely wine, because I think we need to be very, very serious about it, because this wine talks about us and talks about the region and talks about families. And the lovely thing about these wines is that they travel around the world. So you can find them around the world. They will be put in cellars. They're going to be forgotten there, maybe for sometimes. Sometimes they're going to be forgotten. Hopefully, not too many of them. So you've asked which are the best vintages. Of course, I have some bottles of 1990 that I really love. I recently opened a bottle of 85. Again, a terrific vintage. I have always loved 1999. I believe that 1999 is a terrific vintage. And of course, the perfect vintage is has to be made. So I believe in 2021 we're going to be there. So be ready 2026 when this is going to be on the market. But I believe that again we have to enjoy the vintage for what it is, and enjoy the differences. No matter what is your budget that you have on buying wine and spending wine, you will never ever buy a bottle of Castelgiocondo, drink a lunch and dinner for the rest of your life. I think that would be a very, very sad way of approaching wine. I think that the lovely thing about wine is to have one day Alessandra's wine, another day Bernardino, and here it goes to surf around the world and have great wines. Actually, by the way, I know that you guys have a mixed case that you deliver, and that's great fun. It's a great way to enjoy wine with friends, and pop corks. And nowadays you have Google, and so you can surf around the world with this device. So as much as I would love people to drink my wine always, but I encourage them not to do that. I encourage them to look around the world, and really, there is never ever going to be a wine that you will drink from today and on. If not, you don't like wine.
Yeah.
And wine has to be always paired. Bernardino said it right, Alessandra said it right, but I'm picky with pairing. I believe that wine, I've never did that, but one day I'm going to write it on my back label. It's strictly forbidden to open this bottle of wine alone. Wine has to be drunk, has to be paired with friends. Yeah. And sometimes with some tricky friends, because with a good bottle of wine, they're going to become friends.
It's a good way to make friends. You should also put this bottle will help you make friends.
Indeed.
Yes. Yes.
Indeed.
I think those are two
I am positive about that. So wine has to be shared. If you are thirsty, have a glass of water or something else. But if you want to have a trip around the world, have it with friends, stay at home and have a couple of bottles from your cellar or from the store down the road, and enjoy them with a great glass. This is like good for a glass of water. This is terrific for a glass of water.
And this is great for a glass
of wine. This has to be for a wine. I see Alessandra.
Do you have the 2015 for yours?
I have the 2015. I was polite enough to open the 2015 with all of you. So,
can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts as you taste it? What kind of stands out to you? I mean, these are all such wonderful Brunellos. What is standing out to you that says wonderful Brunello as we taste it?
Like every wine, everything starts from the moment that you pour your wine in the glass. The color already tells you something. So in Montalcino, the variety Sangiovese, it tends to be lighter color than a Cab or lighter color than a Merlot. So don't look for extremely powerful colors, but those colors that they are bright enough, but you can actually see through them. And then it's a very important part is when you put your wines in the nose, and I've done it a lot in my life. In fact, my nose has become very long, very extremely, but that makes it even more enjoyable, the wine, because the wine is already telling you a story of balance. In this case, 2015, what makes this vintage a 5-star harvest? That is a wine of powerful, but also of balance. And So let's have a fear of oak, and in a great Brunello, oak is here but is not here. So you don't have the perception of the oak. The oak is there, but you don't have the perception. Some years ago, people loved oak and loved that taste of barrels that sometimes barrel give, that is vanilla. And often I've said, if you really like vanilla, go down the road and have a vanilla ice cream. It's much cheaper than buying such a bottle. And it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to spend $50+ to have a entity's vanilla. So that is, let's leave it to vanilla ice cream. So here, instead, you have to go layers. So each time you find something else. You find something that is more complex, and you're really looking through, and you're really getting into the wine, and like a great silk. And this is approachable, and is complex, and it's it's meant that you fall in love with it right there. And then drinking it. So what you find then in the glass, you find that the nose told you how sweet and how terrific and how charming this wine was. Then you put it in your mouth, and there he comes, the character, and says, okay, now wait a second. This is somebody to respect. So it's not only something sweet and easy going. No, not at all. This is a wine that opens up into your mouth, really enhances and embraces your palate, and when you swallow it, actually, sometimes you think, did I swallow it or not? Because the taste is there. And this is the great thing, because then you can have a bite of some food, or maybe another glass or something else that you can, and this melts into other tastes. So I think that this is let's not make it too romantic about it, but it's something that wants to hug you. Now it's forbidden, by the way, with COVID, to hug yourself, but it's
a wine can hug you. It's okay.
Exactly. So that's a great chance about it.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't have enough, one hug, open 2 bottles, and so this when you go in a restaurant, I wouldn't go in restaurants, and I always look what people are drinking, and I look at glasses, and sometimes I see people that they have the glass sitting there, and they had a glass of wine, the wine is sitting there. So that means that wine, there is something that it didn't match with the person, or it didn't something. And it said the terrific thing about a glass of Brunello, that often the glass at the end of the meal is empty, because it's never overpowering, but yet is there, has this endless long finish, so that you actually are searching for another sip. And this is really what it's all about, Brunello, and why.
My glass is empty, which is another sign that I was begging for another.
You went through your homework properly.
Thank you. And it is. This was so elegant, and the wonderful fruit and the perfumed, and like you said, every time I swirled, I got something new. I think all of these wines showed that. And then, of course, when you sip these, the structure kind of defies some of the. Just is so pretty on the nose, but then you get it in your mouth and you say, "Whoa, nope! This has something to say. This has some power." And these are also uniquely different, and I love that too. They all have wonderful complexity and structure and beautiful aromas and flavors and great integration, that beautifully long finish, which is my favorite part of a wine. But they're also so uniquely original and different, and yet traditional, and yet fun. So obviously I'm a huge fan of Brunello, and these wines are absolutely lovely. I just want to thank all of you for being here and tasting these wines and talking through them with some wonderful stories and analogies. I kind of want to say, everybody go home and hug, give your wine a hug, fall in love with these wines. Take your time, it's okay. But thank you so much. I think this really showed off the terroir and different styles of Brunello. So if you did not get a chance to get the wines at home, they're still available on Wine.com, and I encourage that. But again, thank you for your time, staying up a little bit late to talk us through our love story with Brunello.
Thank you. And no, I just wanted to say that I'll leave you to, well, when we're done, but I'll enjoy the pairing the Brunello with the most, I think, crazy pairing you can think of, because I'd love to finish the night with a bit of Brunello and chocolate. Best way to go to bed. For us, it's quite late at night. I know you still have a whole evening in front of you, but also with chocolate, which you would believe it's crazy as a thought in the beginning, but then it's really, that's what makes it so special.
I actually think this wine with some good dark chocolate is a perfect match. So I will save that for later as well. Thank you. All right. Well, cheers to you all. Thank you again for joining us.
Grazie. Cheers.
Ciao.
Ciao. Buonanotte a tutti.
It's both a science and a form of high art. It's made from the combination of grapes, sunlight, rain, soil, and time. It's raised up in the moments that matter. It's wine. And we are Wine.com. We have the largest wine selection in the world, online sommeliers with free advice, and now our powerful new app puts the entire world of wine in your hands. Wine.com. Seriously passionate about wine. Download our free app today.